my tour at Ramey. When I arrived at Ramey in May of 1951, the major aircraft here were B-29s and B-50s. The next year, the B-36s started to arrive. I was on the tarmac the day that the first B-36 arrived. In addition, Mats flew everything they had at Ramey. I was part of Flight C of the 1st Air Rescue Squadron that was located in hangar number 1 next to the tower. All of our offices and shops were on the side of hangar 1 next to the tower. We lived on the 3rd floor of barracks number 1 across the street. We had 4 PBYs, 1 C-82, and 1 H-5 helicopter. Before I arrived, I had heard that they had earlier had a B-17 and that they had lost a PBY while making water landings in Aguadilla Bay. Someday someone will find a PBY at the bottom of Aguadilla Bay. About 6 months after I arrived, we started to replace the PBYs with the new SA-16 Albatross. On Good Friday of 1952, I was on the alert crew, and I went to lunch in barracks number 1 a little early. After lunch, I went to the 3rd floor to nap a while before returning to work. All of a sudden, the alert sounded. I raced across the street to the alert Albatross. The pilots were already there and had started the engines. A few minutes later, we taxied to the end of the runway near the golf course and took off without warning the engines. I sensed something important. Before our pilot came over the intercom and stated that the DC-4 was ditching with 69 souls aboard about 5 miles from San Juan. When we arrived over the scene, all I could see was a Coast Guard BBY that was already underwater and some colored clothing and a small raft. Our pilot came over the intercom, should I land? Our crew chief answered, for Christ's sake, yes. That's what we're here for. Since we're 12-foot swells, and we had never landed in water that rough before, we tried to land between the swells, but we hit like a ton of bricks. And all I could see out the windows was water. I opened the rear hatch and immediately could see a few people floating. The nearest survivor I could see was a man in a life vest. We told the pilot over the intercom, and with his reverse pitch, he maneuvered where we could throw him a rope. As he floated between a propeller and a tail, both the plane and the survivor were bouncing like corks, and I was afraid that he might get hit by the propeller. One instant he was 10 feet away, and the next instant he was 20 feet away. We threw the rope several times, and the first time that he got his hands on the rope, we were able to pull him to the door. All he could say was, my friend, my friend. He was a young Puerto Rican fellow and apparently knew little English. We then spotted a man holding a small boy. Again, over the intercom, we got the pilot to maneuver where we could throw him a rope. We pulled him to the rear door and first brought the boy aboard. The man was in a white shirt and his undershorts. He was heavy, and it took 3 of us to pull him aboard. He told us that he was a pilot of the DC-4. The next day, I read in the headline of El Mundo that he was Captain John Byrne, husband of the famous singer Jane Froman. I still have that front page of the 1952 El Mundo newspaper here with me today, and we may be happy to donate it to the Ramey Air Force Base Museum if Jerry wants it. We pulled one young, unconscious girl aboard and tried to revive her, but failed. We saw several more floating bodies without life vests, but finally decided to concentrate our efforts on obvious survivors. We then spotted another man holding a young boy. We maneuvered to throw him a rope and brought him aboard. I told the man to go lie down in one of our bunks, but he retorted that he was the Coast Guard commander who had jumped from his PBY to rescue the boy and then couldn't get back to his PBY. He was lucky to have survived. He would have never gotten back to his PBY from where we found him. PBYs didn't have reverse pitch as we had in the Albatross, and it was extremely difficult for them to maneuver in the high seas. After considerable time, it became apparent that there would be no more survivors and that we would have to go to San Juan. It was impossible to take off because of the large waves. So we taxied all the way to San Juan Harbor and then took off and landed at Isla Grande. Of the 69 people aboard the DC-4, 17 survived the crash. We picked up 6, including the pilot. Most of the other survivors were on a raft that was launched by the crew and were picked up by a Coast Guard cutter. The whole crew of the DC-4 survived the crash. Life vests were under the seats, just as they are today, but no one knew that the life vests were under the seats. As there was no safety demonstration in those days, at that time the airlines were afraid that a safety demonstration might make more people become fearful of flying. We believe that the majority would have survived if they had known that the life vests were under their seats. Our commanding officer made a major effort to have the airlines demonstrate a safety procedure. I believe that the safety demonstration that is given today on all the airlines is a direct result of the Good Friday crash of 1952. About a year later, I saw the movie with a song in my heart about the life of James Roman in one of the Aguadilla theaters. The movie started out by showing an earlier crash in Lisbon, Portugal, where Captain Byrne had saved the life of James Roman. The movie is still being shown on television today. Television today. Shortly after the Good Friday crash, I was married in Iguana, about 10 miles from here. And that started a whole new world of adventure that I am still living today with my wife, Elma. In closing, I am especially grateful to the Ramey Air Force Base Historical Association, to the United States Coast Guard Air Station Bregan, and to the Berlin Airlift Historical Foundation for giving me this opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you today. I will always be proud of the small part that I played in the history of Ramey Air Force Base. Kent Holmes has suggested that if anyone has a question, that I answer questions.